Greetings, friends. Welcome back to the first episode of 2024. Happy New Year. I hope you celebrated to your heart's content and you're ready to hit the road running, as they say, for 2024. I was realizing recently that I've already had so many plans for Tango for 2024, and the year hasn't even started. And Tango travel and planning Tango travel takes quite a bit of our mental energy, depending on how far along you are in Tango. But for many of us, it becomes sort of the highlight of the year for different Tango events and marathons and festivals that are going on. There's always this excitement of like, oh, which events am I going to go to this year? And so I thought I would do an episode actually about that because I guess I'm kind of surprised still how difficult it is to find events that are good. Now, when I say good, that's very subjective. So I should say events that are right for you, like where you have a great time and they sort of fit your personality. And it's been hard for me in some ways to figure that out over the years. So I thought I would do an episode where I share just sort of how I go about finding events and what kinds of things I'm curious about or what kinds of questions I ask before I register for an event and how I sort of go through that decision process. Because I don't know about you, but I've noticed there are so many Tango events that are popping up. It seems like there's a new event mentioned every week. I see on Facebook some sort of promotions for different festivals and marathons that are happening. And, you can't make all of it. So how do you go through that process of making that decision? And maybe I've also heard this problem that some people don't find out information about the events that they want until after they happened. And so some of it has to do with just strategies for marketing that different events have and whether they reach you or not on social media, whether you use social media or not. So this is what this episode is dedicated to. And I would absolutely love to get some of your perspective, your advice, if you've been traveling for Tango a lot, if you have a way that I don't mention for finding out about events or any types of tips along those lines, please send them my way. You can comment below whether you're listening on Spotify or on YouTube. You can submit your answers below the podcast. And also you can reach out to me on social media at IMSO I'm so Tango, or by email at connect@imsotango.com. So speaking of travel, I mentioned in my newsletter recently that I already have a lot of my itinerary built out for 2024. And if you're curious about where I'm traveling to, you can check out my website. I've attached the link to my website below. And see if our paths will overlap. I've gotten some messages, people asking me if I'm offering sessions when I travel, whether it's for my one-on-one private sessions or practice sessions, which is something new that I'm offering. I encourage you to check it out. And the answer is yes. I very much encourage you to reach out to me if you'd like to book a session with me. This is one of the my favorite parts about traveling for Tango is to be able to actually visit a community and work with the community, the dancers there, and sort of help along as I travel to bring more of that energy of learning, of practicing, of building up the community with me. So yeah, check it out and make sure you reach out to me if you have questions. So first I want to cover kind of like sources of information for different events. Some of these will be probably really obvious to you. Maybe you already see them or use them, and maybe some of them will be new. So, one of the ways that I now find out about events is definitely through Facebook. Facebook, and I know some people don't like using Facebook, and I understand. I'm used to it. I've been a user for many, many years, and it's just that's how I find out about things. And I have to say that of all the social media platforms, Facebook seems to be, or has been for the past number of years, as sort of the default platform for tango dancers. I think it's changing a little bit, and Instagram is starting to be more used by dancers. But it used to be the last time I was in Buenos Aires, I actually noted that, and I'm curious if it's still happening. Maybe some of you who are traveling to Buenos Aires, you can let me know if this is still the case. But back in, I think it was 2018 when I went there last, every time I danced with somebody local or a foreigner and they wanted to connect with me, they would ask me my name and then they would ask me if I'm on Facebook. So I, over the years, have connected with lots of different people and friended, and people friended me and I started following people. So because of those connections, I see a lot of the posts that a lot of the organizers and teachers make, teachers who are traveling, who are posting about their tour dates. So this is one way that I find the information. It's really easy for me. Now, one thing that I think is a cool little tip to remember when you are scrolling on your feed on Facebook is that anything that you click on or like or comment on, the algorithm is going to register that as you liking that kind of content, and it's going to show it more to you. So you can kind of think about this as a training process. So anytime that you see the kind of content you want to see more of, so in this case, tango events, or you want to know about tango milongas that are happening in the city, or you want to be connected to certain tango groups, if you see a post by them, make sure you interact with it, like it, share it, comment on it. And that way it's kind of a training process where the algorithm is going to start showing you more stuff like that. I also reach out to different people as I go along and I travel. So anytime you travel and you meet somebody new, if you use Facebook, that's a great way to sort of plug into their community, especially if it's somebody that you really like and you want to hang out with them and you want to hang out with people that they know. You're kind of starting to root yourself in different pockets of tango communities. It's a great strategy to connect with them on Facebook, see what groups they're part of. They might suggest groups. And one of the really nice things that's kind of like an unofficial etiquette that some dancers follow, nobody really talks about it, but I think it's a really, really nice touch, is that when you go to an event, let's say you attended a festival or a marathon, there's certain dancers that really stood out to you and you really connected with them, and maybe it's somebody new that you met, go ahead and send them a message on Facebook afterwards and just express gratitude. It's just such a nice touch. It doesn't have to be a lot of people because obviously, you don't want to spend your time just like sending thank you messages as if it's like your job. But, 4 or 5 people that you connected with, to send them a thank you note and wishing that, you connect again. That's like a really, really nice touch. And that expands your network. And honestly, that's kind of how I use Facebook. And Instagram is starting to be that hub as well for dancers. But Facebook has been around for a while in this way where it like provides that source for dancers. So I think you'll find a lot more information on Facebook at this point. Now, the other thing on Facebook that you can do is join groups. Most events, most festivals, marathons, communities, they'll have groups. So I get a lot of messages from people, from actually listeners to this podcast, and they'll say, "Oh, I'm traveling to LA. is there tango? And I have the same question. Like when I go to dance, I recently went to Houston. I had the same question, like, is there a website? Is there a Facebook account, right? So it's good to join groups for different cities. So LA Tango has a group. I think it's called Tango in LA. There's also websites like tangomango.com. In Portland, I think there's portlandtango.com, I think is the website. For Texas, there's one. So there's different websites for different regions that you can bookmark. You can get on their mailing lists. So those are just some of the ways that you can use Facebook to find out about different events. With Instagram, it's very similar. However, I have to say, Instagram is not as intuitive to me as Facebook. I've had to sort of spend some time learning how to really use it. So Instagram is useful if you're ready for it, but it's not necessary, I would say. The other resource that I think I hope that you've already seen it, I hope it grows to be more popular, is a tango app that was started by a tango dancer. It's called Tango Partner app. So it's another way that you can actually plug into a network of just dancers on your phone. You download this app, and it's on your phone, and you can go in and you can see different milongas locally that are going on. You can see information about festivals and connect with dancers locally. You can actually message people within the app. So it's kind of a cool way that you can use without Facebook or social media. You can then have like a direct access to the tango scene in that way. Now, yes, all of those ways are great to find out about events. And I think tango organizers are getting more and more savvy at using social media and being really present and showing, a lot of reminders about events. So it's getting better and better in that way. But it still is the case that the best way to find out about events is word of mouth. I mean, that seems to be true for everything forever. No matter what kind of marketing you might invest in, word of mouth will still be the most profound, the most impactful type of marketing. So one thing I'm in a habit of doing is talking to people who come back from events. So anytime I'm at a milonga or I run into a friend who just came back from a marathon, that's a great way to do some research to figure out if this event is something that should be going on your schedule, on your itinerary. Now, of course, it's in hindsight, so there is a little bit of a long-term process where you're investing for the future. But that's okay. That's always going to be the case. I have a running list of events that I'm interested in that I haven't yet checked out. And I am at a point, particularly for myself, I'm really interested in traveling to Europe and dancing. So one of the things I've been doing for the past couple of years, actually, is anytime I hear people coming from Europe or coming back from a marathon in Europe, or they live in Europe or something, I always bombard them with lots of questions. So I want to spend some time kind of giving you some of the questions that I have, and that might be helpful for you to consider when you're chatting with somebody and you're trying to decide for yourself whether an event is worth your time and energy. You can use some of these questions in addition to your own, right? Like, what are some of the important things for you that you really want to make sure you have access to when you go to dance? We all are very specific in our needs. And so everything that I share with you, my preferences, are just really my personal preferences. And more than anything, I just want you to get a sense of how I think about it for myself. And that will, I think, resonate on the level for you where you'll get in touch with your own preferences. That's kind of the goal of this episode. One of the first questions I ask is what the number of people is at this festival. So if somebody came back from a marathon or a festival, one of the first things is, how big is it? Because honestly, there is such a thing as too many people. Yes, we want concentration. We want packed floors to a certain degree, but there's just this sweet spot beyond which the event gets really big. And for me, if I hear it's a festival with 600 people, I'm not interested. And that's just me. Some people, the bigger, the better. And it's just something I've learned that I like. I like that feeling of intimacy that you get when you have a lot of people, but it's not so many that over the period of 3 days, there's still people that you never talk to. Like usually I like going to an event where it'll be like 150 to 200 people. And in that case, it's like you can, at least in passing, connect with everyone over the weekend. That's the goal. The next thing, of course, that's really important is the gender split. And typically, there's been more events that have had a disproportionate amount of followers compared to leaders than events that actually have a good split. Like it's a little bit of a rarity right now to find events that are really well balanced. Now, there's a lot of focus on it by organizers everywhere. It's a huge topic of discussion. Everybody's looking for a way to incentivize more leaders to come and figure out ways to balance it. I think the inclusion and the incentivizing of dual role dancers to events will help quite a bit and does help, I know. But it's still the case that gender balance is a big deal. And for somebody who is, let's say, you're an older dancer, you haven't been around for a long time, and you're started tango in the last couple of years, when you go to an event, if it's not good gender balance, that really might affect your dance experience. And you might come away with either a worse or a better experience because of it. So it's something that you really want to think about. Unfortunately, the gender imbalance is weighted towards women, right? So there's too many women typically and not enough men. And that's been the problem for a long time. So it is something that you need to think about when you're choosing an event based on your gender. What is important to you, and whether you're okay with going to an event that has a gender imbalance and you might end up sitting a lot. Now, I've heard in Europe, actually, there's been some rumors I've heard of people actually having to hire someone to register with, because sometimes the tango events only allow you to register with a partner. So there's been cases of women paying men to register with them and paying them for their time to go to festivals. So you basically are hiring a taxi dancer to come with you to a festival. Now, in my mind, it has to be a really phenomenal event for me to want to do that. But it is an option. It's not as common to do this in the United States. I don't see that as a common practice. But if there is a requirement, especially with festivals that do try to have a better gender balance, frequently they will ask you to register with someone else. You can go on Facebook and reach out to people. And this is where those people that you connect with along the way come in really handy, and register with a friend. And sometimes you can register with a dual role dancer. Like you could register with the woman who dances as a leader. So for me, when I typically register for events, if there is an option for me to register as just a leader, I will, because I want to help that gender balance and help get more people in. So if you're a dual role dancer, consider this strategy to help other dancers to get into events if they need it. All right. So these are some of the preliminary things I ask. Now, the next set of questions has to do with the actual venue and the organization of the event because details matter. And I've really learned this the hard way. So now I have a particular set of preferences, I would say, when it comes to location and how the event is organized. So, first of all, the actual schedule of the milongas, whether there's a lot of like nighttime dancing, all nighters, are there daytime milongas? Typically nowadays, if I see an event that does not have a lot of daytime dancing, I don't really consider it for myself because I'm not a nighttime dancer anymore. That's just something that's shifted for me. I don't like staying up really late. So a lot of times when I'm considering an event, I want to see that I can go dance during the day. I might go dance for a few hours in the evening, but I'm not going to be staying up all night. So I'm surprised how there's so many events that are not cluing into this because it is kind of a trend. But I am excited that there's some changes happening. So there's an event coming up here in LA that El Motivo Tango Marathon put on by LA Tango Academy. It's going to be the first marathon that they're putting on. It's in a big new venue. It's very exciting. And one of the things that I'm really appreciating is that all of the dancing is done by midnight. It's kind of radical. I've never attended an event that had dancing over at midnight. But there's dancing all day long. I don't remember the exact schedule, but when I was looking at it, I remember for myself thinking, oh, thank God, finally, a schedule that I can get behind as a dancer. So for me, I need daytime dancing. And also, are there performances? Now, typically, it's been my understanding that if it's a festival, there will be performances. And if it's a marathon, there shouldn't be performances. But as I've learned, that's not always the case. There are times that a marathon will have performances. It will depend on the organizer. It depends on sort of the focus of the event. So for me, if there are a lot of performances, I'm just not interested. So there is an event, I'm not going to mention what it is, that really focuses on performances that I attended in the last couple of years. And after that first time I went to that event, there was about an hour and a half of performances every night. Not once over the 4-day festival, but every night there was like an hour to an hour and a half of performances. And to me, it was like, no, that's just not my thing. I don't want that. If you're a person who really enjoys performances and it's really inspiring to you, you might be the opposite. You might be like, oh my God, I want to go to this because I want to see these performances. And that's your personality. And that's awesome. But as a social dancer who's really interested in dance time, I'm not interested in watching dance. I derive a lot more pleasure from watching dance on screen. I love watching videos of dancing, but I don't really like dancing. I don't really like watching performances live. I don't enjoy it as much. So for me, that's a big no-no. So considering how much time is dedicated to performances, mostly with festivals, you will see this more. When I register for a festival, I have it in the back of the mind. Okay, there's going to be performances and I plan for it. So you want to kind of consider that for yourself. Now, also, I'm always really curious about the venue, what the venue is like, what the seating arrangement is like, what the floor quality is. So when I lived in Portland, I got really spoiled because Portland is famous for having a lot of beautiful floors. There's a lot of old buildings with beautiful wood floors. And so a lot of the dancing that I did in Portland was on these amazing surfaces that felt really good on your knees. But unfortunately, that's a rarity. And most of the time, the venues that I dance in these days, whether it's locally or traveling, it's concrete. So it might be a wooden floor, but underneath it, it's concrete. It's important to me because dancing on concrete reduces my ability to dance significantly. I start feeling knee pain eventually. There's a little bit of aching. So that's something I ask whenever I talk to someone who came back, like, what's the floor quality like? Then also food. How is the food? Was there food? Is there coffee? Is there a way to get food, like in terms of the location of the venue? If they're not serving food, is there access to food around there? Are there coffee shops? Is it pedestrian? Those kinds of issues come up when you're at the venue. And if you're dancing for like 16 hours straight, you want to have everything sort of figured out, because there's been times that I've been stranded, starving with no food, and I'm supposed to dance for 4 more hours and there's like nothing to eat. So that's something to consider. And speaking of geographical location, when organizers put on these big events, they have to rent spaces sometimes that are off the beaten path because of cost. So maybe it will be a hotel that's near an airport, or it's a dance studio that's like way out of town. So asking how easy it is to get to the venue. Is it walking distance from a hotel? Do you need to get a hotel nearby? Can you? Or does it have to be an Airbnb? Those kinds of things really impact my decision, because typically festivals and marathons in the United States, they're pretty costly. I think it's pretty typical now to pay around $200 for a marathon, and for a festival it can be upwards of $400 to $500 depending on the package that you get. So on the one hand, it feels like a good deal when you have 3 or 4 days of dancing and maybe there's food and accommodations are fine, but then you have to fly and rent a car and drive for 2 hours to get there. And you didn't know that. Like, that actually happened to me once, where super embarrassing. I agreed actually to attend an event. This was years ago. I agreed to attend an event. I was asked to DJ, and then I said yes before I even looked at what it required to get there. And I realized once I looked at the geography that it was going to be so difficult to get to this venue for me. It was either going to be 2 days of driving or flying and then driving for 4 hours. It was just so inconvenient. So there was no way I could make it work at that time. And I felt really bad that I had to back out. But that's just kind of how it is. And I learned my lesson. So nowadays, and I got to say, this is one of the reasons too that I haven't danced very much on the East Coast. I live on the West Coast, so most of my dancing I do on the West Coast. It's so easy here. If I want to go to Portland, I just fly a couple of hours, I'm there. But if I want to go to East Coast, I have to deal with higher prices for flights, more flight time, and on top of that, there's time difference. And the last time I went to East Coast to dance, I didn't think much of it, but the 3 hours that was the difference, it really impacted my whole sort of awareness and sense of place and self. And it ended up being kind of stressful. So one of the things that I think about is that if I'm going somewhere like East Coast, where there's going to be a significant time change and maybe even significant temperature change, like that's something to consider when you're going from somewhere really warm to somewhere really cold, or vice versa. It impacts your body for sure. Then allowing for a little extra time, a little buffer zone before and after the event, so you sort of have a little bit of time to chill and spend some downtime just adjusting. That's going to be my strategy if I have travel to East Coast this year or in the future, that's always my priority, is to say like, okay, I know I'm going to this event, but I know I need an extra day to kind of adjust and settle. Now, all of these considerations about the geographical location and the rental of Airbnb or hotel, like a lot of this stuff you can figure out with the person that you're talking a lot of times, because if you connect with that person and if you decide that you want to go to this event the following year, then you can actually coordinate with people and get rooms together or get an Airbnb together. And of all of the amazing things that you experience by traveling for tango events, I have to say one of my favorite is this ability to get an Airbnb close to the venue together with some of your best tango buddies, and then be able to go together to events and come back together. Like that setup is probably my favorite. And alongside that, I really love staying at nice hotels as well. As I've mentioned in my last episode, it's been ever since I was a kid. You know, when I was a kid, I was growing up in Africa. My father was working there at the Russian embassy, and we had to go on lots of road trips. And I hated the road trip part, but I loved getting to the hotel, and we got to stay at a lot of hotels. And as a kid, there was all this like magic of being in a hotel. So I think I've always had that excitement about staying at a new hotel and sort of having everything taken care of. There's just something nice about staying at a hotel and knowing that you don't have to worry about making the bed. You don't have to worry about cleaning up after yourself. You get to be a kid again where somebody else takes care of it. I appreciate that as an adult. Some people prefer staying at Airbnbs, and I love that too. However, sometimes Airbnbs can be a little bit more hassle, especially if you're not splitting it with someone else. It's better when it's like a group. So I'm going to go back a little bit to the actual event questions. So some of the other things that kind of are coming up to my mind that are really important that I consider. Once all of these other things I've asked and I've determined that I'm into the idea of going to this event, the next set of questions is going to have to deal with the actual event and DJing specifically, like who are the DJs? Now, I do know that for some people at this point, that does not play a huge part in their decision, because maybe you're new to tango music and it's just not on your radar. So I want to make sure that you don't take away that you have to have this as your measure for how good an event is, but that's what I do. So I ask who the DJs are, what the music was like, and then also the sound system. If the sound system was good, that's something I really look for. You know, and as I'm talking about it, it's kind of another good strategy on Facebook. A lot of times after the event happens, the organizers will post pictures from the event. And it's good to look through those pictures because you get a sense of what the venue is like. And if they have performances, you'll get to see who the teachers are. A lot of times they'll have pictures of, people dancing. So you get to see who the dancers are. And nowadays, I every time I see a video, I see people I know. So I can say like, oh, that person was there and that person was there. And eventually that gives you sort of a way to figure out the level that's there. And when I say level, I'm not saying level that's like advanced versus beginner, but level in relation to where you are. Like you see people that you dance with already, that you enjoy dancing, you enjoy their company, you see them at those events, and it's a good sign because you're like, oh, well, that person's there. Since they are there, that's a good chance that it's going to be a good event. But if you see a lot of people that you don't dance with, then, that's something else. And of course, that takes time. So for those of you who are new to traveling with tango, new to going to tango events, of course, it's going to take you some time to get to know the community. But it doesn't take as long as you think. I remember when I was coming back from Buenos Aires after being there for 6 months, I was feeling all tragic. I remember I was at the airport and I am going through security, right? I remember this moment so clearly. I'm going through security, like passport control or something, and there's tango music playing above my head at the airport, which to me is like, of course, it's Buenos Aires. They're going to play tango music at the airport. I'm looking at the guy in the other booth, not the one I'm at, but there's a guy down the way at the booth who's like singing along with the song. And I felt in that moment like I was so sad because I was like, oh, I'm separating from this place. And right after I pass the security, I go to the next place and like I just go into another room and all of a sudden it's like pop music and it's bright lights and it's all the, all the typical airport stuff, duty free and all that, and like this banging pop music. And to me, I was like, wow, gosh, I'm going to miss this so much. It's like a different world, stepping out of this tango world and stepping back into reality. But, I landed back in Portland and within a week or a couple of weeks, I ran into people that I had met in Buenos Aires. And after that happened, like several times over the next few months, I was like, man, there's nothing sad here. We're like this big global community. And now that you plugged into one part of it, it's inevitable. You're going to connect with a huge community worldwide because everybody's traveling, everybody's exchanging embraces and connecting with people. So it was pretty cool to realize that. So looking at pictures of events is a great way to get like a sense of what the event is like and who the dancers are, what the level is like. And for some people, age matters. There's definitely marathons are considered to be a little bit younger. They tend to sway younger, whereas encuentros tend to sway a little bit older. I'm not saying that is really the way it is. That's just my impression and the impression that I've gotten from other dancers. Although I have gotten messages where people are like, no, it's not like that at all. And then I'm like, okay. So there's exceptions to the rule. But this is something that you might consider in terms of age. And if it's important to you to be in an age group that you connect with better, looking at pictures of events is a great way to get a sense of that. Now, as you ask these questions, I would recommend you also pay attention to the way people answer them. Because people, I've noticed, dancers in particular, they want to be nice and they want to have a positive outlook and they don't want to bitch and moan and complain and rag on other people. So most of the time, people who invest a whole weekend into an event are not going to come back and say, oh, it was terrible. I think there's a part of us that seeks to make it work and have fun no matter what. So some people, they're not going to necessarily open up and just tell you that they actually didn't enjoy it. But you want to pay attention to what are the things that they are talking about. If you ask them and you ask, how was the event? And they'll say, great. And I'll say, well, what did you love about it? Or what did you like about it? And I notice where it goes, and they'll say something like, well, it was a smaller event and I didn't have as much dancing as I wanted, but the dancing that I had was really good. To me, that says, okay, it's a smaller event, number one. Maybe the level was a little bit lower than what this particular dancer is used to. So, and if they're my level, it kind of gives me a sense of like, oh, okay, so it's a smaller event. There's probably a handful of dancers to dance with. And so it's probably not like the best of the best, but it still works. So then from there, I'd be like, okay, so you got the dancing, but how was the music? How did you like the music? And kind of go from there and ask them some questions. And I have to say, anytime I talk to someone about an event, I have more and more questions because I'm always interested in what actually makes a good tango event and what is it that we social dancers really want from an event. So I keep prying and I keep digging and asking more and more questions, and you probably will too. And then all you have to do really is go and do the event, right? If you decide that you're going to attend an event, you make your choice, you pay your admission fee, you get in, and then you go, you revisit some of those questions in your mind afterwards and ask yourself what kind of an experience you had. And I'll leave this episode by sharing exactly this kind of scenario that happened to me recently and what I learned from it. One year, I ended up attending an event that conflicted with another event that all of my friends were going, but somehow it turned out that I was committed to this other event somewhere else. And so as I went to my event, I was looking at pictures of the event that a lot of my friends were attending, and everybody was, celebrating and excited to be there. And I was seeing all the posts, and I was at a different event. I was having my own great time, but there was a little bit of like a FOMO, a little bit of like, oh, am I missing out on something because all my friends are at this other event? So when I came back, I ended up asking lots of people from that event that I missed, and I kept getting the same answers. It was really interesting. So it was the same kind of answer. Everybody really complimented the setup of the event and how beautiful it was. But I kept getting the same feedback, either no comment about the dancing or comments like it was really crowded and it felt kind of impersonal, but it was great otherwise, So I had my own sense of like, I guess, initial understanding of how this event felt, even though I wasn't there. And then the following year, I actually got to attend this event. And it was such a great experience to, go from having FOMO to coming back and getting all this feedback and kind of getting a sense of like, okay, I think I kind of get what this event is like. And then I got to attend it. And I have to say my initial sense of what it was going to be like was proven correct. And I resolved my feeling of FOMO. I was not upset that I had missed it the first year. And that's ultimately, I think, the sweetest lesson from tango that I would love for everyone to have, because FOMO is such a common feeling in tango on a small and large level. And a lot of times we feel so left out from the cool kids who are going to some event. And then there's all these pictures of people having a lot of fun. And we might feel like, oh, I should be there. And why am I not there? Why am I here? There's this feeling of being left out. But honestly, there's no such thing, because every single event in a way is the same. It has the same components with different degrees. And it's really more about finding yourself and finding your own path to fulfillment in your own way. So crafting your own sense of which events you want to go to, scheduling them out throughout the year, connecting with friends and making plans to travel together. I think that's such an exciting personal journey that there's no reason to get lost in the FOMO of it, because, oh my God, there's always another tango event to go to. So I'm going to leave it at that. And I would love to hear some of your tips. We're actually discussing this very issue in my private Facebook group this week. So if you want to contribute to the discussion or join my live banter that's going to happen on Friday, happens every Friday almost, do check out the link in the show notes for the private Facebook group and join in. I hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll continue our banter next week.